You know, there's a delicious paradox that's been tickling the minds of wise people for thousands of years, and it goes something like this. The moment you stop chasing what you want, it starts chasing you. Now, before you dismiss this as some sort of mystical mumbo-jumbo, consider for a moment that perhaps the very act of wanting creates the very condition that prevents you from having. Think of it this way. There's an old Zen saying that goes, "You are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement." It's confusing, I know. It's like saying you're completely whole while simultaneously suggesting there's room for more wholeness. The beautiful thing about paradoxes is that they don't resolve themselves through thinking. They dissolve themselves through understanding. Now, let me tell you a story that illustrates this perfectly. There was once a Zen master, and there's always a Zen master in these stories, isn't there? Who sat before his eager students with two bowls. One bowl was absolutely brimming with rice, overflowing even, while the other was completely, utterly empty. Naturally, when the students complained of hunger, the master offered them the full bowl. But here's the curious thing. No matter how much they ate from this overflowing bowl, they remained perpetually hungry. Their bellies might have been full, but something essential remained unsatisfied. Then the master held up the empty bowl. "But master," they protested, "there's nothing there." "Exactly," he replied with that maddening smile that Zen masters seem to perfect. "Now you have room to be filled." You see, the students had confused the container with the content, the having with the being. When we're constantly full of our own desires, our own ideas about what we need, there's simply no space left for life to surprise us. It's rather like trying to pour tea into a cup that's already full. It just makes a mess. This isn't just Oriental wisdom, mind you. The Stoics understood this principle beautifully. Marcus Aurelius, sitting in his tent on some god-forsaken frontier of the Roman Empire, figured out that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And Epictetus, fascinating fellow. He was born a slave, can you imagine? Yet, he discovered a freedom that no chain could touch by giving up the illusion that he could control anything other than his own responses to life. The secret, you see, is in understanding the difference between a clenched fist and an open palm. When your fist is clenched, trying to grasp and hold and control, nothing new can enter. But the moment you open your hand, suddenly you're in a position to receive. It's not that the universe was withholding anything from you before, it's that you were withholding yourself from the universe. This insight appears everywhere once you start looking for it. Lao Tzu, that wonderfully enigmatic character, put it this way: the sage does not attempt anything very big, and thus achieves greatness. Meanwhile, the Buddha noticed that if you want to know what you were in the past, look at your present. If you want to know your future, look at your present actions. And our friend Epictetus chimed in with, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." All these brilliant minds, separated by centuries and continents, stumbled upon the same cosmic joke. Abundance flows not from accumulation, but from alignment. It's rather like discovering that the key to your house was in your pocket all along, while you were breaking windows trying to get in. Let me share another image that might illuminate this principle. Picture a Taoist sage sitting by a mountain stream, watching water flow around the rocks. Now, the water doesn't hold committee meetings about how to get past the obstacles. It doesn't develop a 5-year strategic plan or practice positive affirmations. It simply flows. And in flowing, in taking the path of least resistance, it accomplishes something rather remarkable. It carves through solid stone. This is what the Taoists call Wu Wei, often translated as non-action, though that's misleading. It's not about being passive or lazy. It's about acting in harmony with the natural flow of things rather than against it. It's the difference between swimming upstream and finding the current. Both involve movement, but one exhausts you while the other carries you. When we align ourselves with this natural flow instead of constantly swimming against it, we become like water, soft, yielding, seemingly weak, yet ultimately irresistible. Water doesn't need to announce its power or prove its worth. It simply does what water does, and in doing so, it shapes the entire landscape. But here's where it gets interesting, and where most people get confused. They think non-attachment means not caring, not engaging, becoming some sort of spiritual zombie floating through life. Nothing could be further from the truth. There's a beautiful story about two Buddhist monks who come upon a woman unable to cross a muddy road. Without hesitation, the senior monk picks her up and carries her across. They continue walking in silence for several hours until finally the junior monk bursts out, "Brother, how could you touch that woman? Our vows forbid such contact." The senior monk looks at him with surprise and says, "I put her down at the river. You're still carrying her." You see, non-attachment isn't about avoiding life. It's about engaging with life fully while holding the outcomes lightly. It's the difference between participating in a dance and trying to choreograph every step of your partner. When you're truly dancing, you're completely present and responsive, but you're not attached to making your partner move in any particular way. This brings us to something that might sound paradoxical at first, the incredible usefulness of emptiness. Lao Tzu was brilliant at pointing this out. He'd say things like, "The hollow of a bowl is what makes it useful for holding soup. The emptiness of a room is what makes it livable. The hub of a wheel, which is essentially a hole, is what allows the wheel to turn." In each case, it's not the substance but the space that provides the function. The same principle applies to consciousness. In meditation, we don't try to stop thoughts. That would be like trying to smooth water with your hand. Instead, we create space around our thoughts, and in that spaciousness, something wonderful happens. Wisdom arises naturally, like a spring bubbling up from underground. Artists understand this intuitively. They know that negative space, the areas where there's no paint, no pencil marks, is just as important as what they've drawn. Musicians know that the silence between notes is what creates rhythm and meaning. Life, it seems, is very much like jazz. It's not just about the notes you play, but about the spaces you leave for improvisation. Now, the Stoics had a wonderfully practical approach to all this. They taught something called the dichotomy of control, a rather academic name for a simple idea. There are things that are up to you, and there are things that are not up to you. What's up to you? Your thoughts, your values, your responses. What's not up to you? Pretty much everything else. The weather, other people's behaviour, whether your train is on time, whether your investments go up or down, whether people like your jokes. The Buddhist approach is slightly different but points to the same truth. They talk about the space between stimulus and response. Someone cuts you off in traffic, that's the stimulus. Your road rage, that's the response. But in between those two events there's a gap, a moment of choice, and in that gap lies all your freedom and power. A Zen student once approached his master and asked, "How do I find peace?" The master replied, "By saying yes to this moment." "But what if this moment is painful?" The student persisted. "Then say yes to the pain," he quipped. Now, this isn't masochism we're talking about, it's recognition. When you stop fighting what is, when you stop insisting that reality should be different from what it actually is, something extraordinary happens. You discover that reality is workable exactly as it is. Not because it's perfect, but because resistance to what is only adds suffering to pain, anxiety to difficulty. So how do we practically apply this ancient wisdom in our thoroughly modern lives? Well, you might start by asking yourself 3 simple questions each morning. First, what am I trying to control that isn't actually up to me? Make a little mental list if you like, then imagine placing all those concerns in a box labelled "Not My Department." It's quite liberating, actually. Second question, what am I grasping that I could hold more lightly? Try this little exercise. Cup some water in your hands. Notice how it stays there when your hands are relaxed and open. Now, clench your fists. See what happens? The very act of grasping destroys what you're trying to hold. Third question, where am I swimming against the current, and how can I find the flow? Think of your life as a river. Sometimes you'll need to swim across it or even upstream, but if you're constantly exhausted, you might want to check whether you're fighting the current unnecessarily. These aren't just intellectual exercises, you understand. They're invitations to live differently, to participate in what the ancients called the Great Dance, that cosmic choreography where everything moves in perfect, spontaneous harmony. The The Stoics had a lovely morning practice. They'd begin each day by acknowledging, "Today I will focus on what is mine to do, and release what is not mine to control." Meanwhile, the Buddhists developed loving-kindness meditation, starting with accepting yourself exactly as you are, then gradually extending that acceptance outward to others. And the Taoists? They'd choose one daily activity, walking, eating, breathing, and do it with complete presence without forcing or rushing. You see, the ancient masters discovered something that we've largely forgotten in our productivity-obsessed culture. The highest achievement is non-achievement. The greatest strength is yielding, and the deepest fulfillment comes from wanting nothing beyond what this moment provides. It's not that they became passive or withdrew from life. Far from it. They became like master musicians who are so skilled they make the most complex pieces sound effortless. They learn to participate fully in the symphony of existence without insisting on conducting the orchestra. So, here's what I suggest. For the next week, try a little experiment. Each morning, ask yourself this question: what if today I needed nothing beyond what this moment provides? Then watch what emerges in that space. Don't try to make anything happen. Don't set goals or expectations. Just see what wants to unfold when you're not constantly telling life how it should behave. You might be surprised to discover that when you stop chasing abundance, abundance starts chasing you. When you stop demanding that life fulfill your expectations, life begins exceeding them. When you stop trying to force the river to flow uphill, you find yourself carried effortlessly toward exactly where you need to be. As Lao Tzu so elegantly put it, the sage is guided by what he feels and not by what he sees. Trust that feeling. Trust the flow. Trust that the universe might just know what it's doing, even when you don't.